bike that might feel comfortable for one person might be an instrument of torture for another, but often getting from torture back to comfortable is just a case of changing a few inexpensive and often free things. So we're going to look at how to change your position on the bike to make it more comfortable, and then we're going to look at how to make the bike feel smoother out on the road. So here is what to look at and why. Saddle height as a point of adjustment is something that I would imagine we're all quite familiar with, but what's often more important from a comfort perspective is the reach from the tip of the saddle to your handlebars. If it's too long, you'll find that it puts loads of pressure on your lower back and then also your neck and shoulders that have to rotate in order to accommodate the extra length. To remedy it, very simply change the stem for a shorter one, bring your handlebars back, and that will relax your upper body. But you might not even have to buy a new stem. If you've got any spaces on top of your current one, then if you remove them, you can simply replace them underneath the stem, and that will raise your handlebars, and that also has the effect of relaxing the upper body. For those of you sitting there thinking about aerodynamics, I would say that yes, on paper, a lower front end is more aerodynamic, but what's actually the key is your body position. So seeing as you can bend your arms, you can still get really aero even with a higher, shorter stem simply by doing just that. Meaning you can be comfortable for most of your ride, but still get aero when you need to. Handlebars themselves are often overlooked as a way of adjusting your position on the bike, when in actual fact, they can radically alter it. So just look at these two, for example. These compact bars have a reach of 70mm and a drop of 122, whereas these have a reach of 80mm and a drop of 148. And the difference between them will be proportionally much greater for smaller riders than larger riders, but in either case, they are still going to significantly affect your position. Now, personally, I always run a compact bar, so one with a short reach and a short drop, because I can then run a longer and lower stem while still staying comfortable, because my position doesn't vary that much when I move my hands. I can't recommend looking at handlebar size enough, really. If you've got small hands and so you struggle to reach the brake levers when you're on the drops, then a compact bar will help. Or if you've got poor lower back flexibility, then likewise a compact bar is going to help you use the drops more. But then if you've got really large hands, or you're simply a taller rider, then larger bars are going to mean that you have more variation to your position. There are a couple of things to talk about handlebars before we leave them, moving away from position and more towards smoothness on the road. The first of those is stiffness, or rather flexibility, because although a stiff handlebar is really good for control, actually a flexible handlebar is noticeably smoother. Now, it's not something that manufacturers tend to talk about, so it's hard to recommend one over another, but you'll often find that carbon handlebars have greater vibration damping properties than aluminium, and that's just because it's easier to build that characteristic into the material. No matter what material your handlebars are made of though, you can always add an extra layer of bar tape. Now that's great for people with big hands because it increases the diameter of the handlebars, so it makes it more comfortable to hold, but it also adds an extra layer of padding as well. I mentioned saddle height earlier, but what about the saddle itself? It certainly makes sense to change it if you're not comfortable, but what should you look for? Well, it's hard to be specific, and I'm no expert in other people's saddles. But personally, I find that I can pretty much get on with anything. After one or two rides on a new seat, I can get comfortable, and away I go. That said, I do have my favourites. I don't tend to like lots of padding. I'd far rather have a softer shell to the saddle that I can kind of settle into. So that might be something that you want to look for. Similarly, you also want to look at the saddle rails themselves. Now, carbon rails tend to be a bit stiffer and transfer more vibration from the bike up into your body, whereas titanium rails, I find at least, tend to be a little bit more comfortable. You will find that the greatest improvement to comfort and smoothness on your bike will come from your tyres. In fact, I spoke to an engineering friend of mine who was trying to do some research into the damping properties of different seat posts. He is actually an interesting guy, despite what you may think, but he was struggling to tell the difference owing to the effect of tyres. Generally, lowering the pressure is the key to smoothness, but you will need to increase the size of your tyres if you drop the pressure too far. A small tyre and low pressure is a recipe for impact punctures. Now, personally, I can run about 85 psi in a 25C tyre. If I go up to a 28C tyre, then I can drop to about 70 psi, and that is like a magic carpet, it's so smooth. Before increasing the volume of your tyres though, you do need to check that they will actually fit into your frame. Most road bikes probably go up to a 27, but even that might be a bit of a push like it would be on this bike. If you are going to swap your tyres out for larger ones, then you will often find that a more expensive tyre has a more supple casing, and this allows it to deform around all the tiny little imperfections in the road, and that has a really significant effect on damping the buzz coming up from the tarmac. If you want to increase the comfort of your road bike, then look at your position first, perhaps shortening the reach from your handlebars to the saddle. Also put larger tyres in. And then of course, make sure you check your handlebars and perhaps double wrap them. If you want to know how to change your handlebars, or in fact double wrap them, then we've got videos showing you how to do precisely that, just up there and just down there. Before going to either though, do make sure you subscribe to GCN. To do that, you just click right there where it says subscribe.